this is Matt, and I don't know if you guys have heard yet or not, but a certain blue hedgehog turns 20 years old this year. Yes, that's right, the Sonic the Hedgehog series is going to be 20. Today, in fact! And I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to be doing retro reviews of the Sonic games that I happen to own and have strong feelings for, whether they be good or bad. But first, I want to provide you with a little history I have with the character. See, when I was 4 years old, the very first video game console I got from my parents was the Sega Genesis. So, naturally, I got Sonic the Hedgehog. It was packaged with the console at the time. I also got Sonic 2, since it had been out for about 2 years when I first got the system. And between the games and the TV shows, Sonic was my everything. I loved Sonic the Hedgehog. Up until I finally got a Nintendo 64 in about 1999, Sonic the Hedgehog was the only video game character that mattered, and obviously, since then, I've been a big Sonic fan. Granted, I've certainly grown up and accepted that the series has had a lot of very bad games, but Sonic will forever be a big part of my childhood, and as an all-time favorite character in series. But, let's get to what you really came here to see. Let's get to the review. And obviously, the first review I'm going to be doing is the very first game, Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's not as good as the other Genesis Sonic games. Much like the original Super Mario Bros., Sonic the Hedgehog isn't quite on par with its two sequels. It hadn't quite found its stride yet. It's not quite as fast as the other games, and it's incredibly difficult. Not to mention you can't spin dash. You also can't turn into Super Sonic, likely because there's only 6 Chaos Emeralds in this game for some reason, and the special stages are garbage. But it's not a bad game at all, just not as good as the sequels, and I learned that pretty much the first day I got it as a kid. The game does do a lot of things right, though. For starters, it introduced us to one of the most iconic stages in video game history, Green Hill Zone, which has been used roughly 700 times since this game. And it also introduced us to Dr. Robotnik, now known as Eggman, one of the best and silliest antagonists in video gaming history. His ball and chain mech will forever be cemented in my subconscious. Another thing I think this game does really well is the platforming. These days, all people ever want out of Sonic is for him to go fast, like in the old days. But if you look at the Sonic Genesis games, especially this one, there actually aren't a lot of moments where you go really fast. Sure, there's plenty of loops and curves that show off Sonic's speed and the Genesis' blast processing, whatever that means. But there's far more points of the game where you actually have to slow down, jump, and dodge obstacles. The very second zone, Marble Zone, has hardly any spots where you run super fast. In fact, you actually have to stop and figure out the right timing to use these blocks to get across the lava. It's less about speed and more about side-scrolling platforming action, and I think fans these days are forgetting that. But this can also get pretty annoying. Perhaps the most infamous stage in the game is Labyrinth Zone, a water stage that is quite frankly no fun at all. All you do is get lost and die, and die, and die, and never go fast. Ever. And the most sadistic part is that they had the balls to make you play it again as the last stage of the game. Bastards. Now, I've never actually beat this game because of how much more difficult it is than the other Genesis games, and maybe that's why I don't like it as much as the others. Either way, the first Sonic game isn't a bad game, but it's definitely not as good as many of the later entries in the series. Regardless, it's a piece of video game history I'd never like to be without. So thanks, Sonic 1, for starting one of my favorite franchises. Tune in next time when I take a look at the next Sonic Genesis game, Sonic the Hedgehog 2.